You are not a static being. Even throughout the day, your mood can change quite drastically. So, what about over the course of your life? Your desires, your interests, your motivations, and dreams can shift in ways that make life confusing. With a career or side project like YouTube, this can be especially confusing. My name is Grant Ball, co-founder of the channel Treesicle with just over 900,000 subscribers. I've been doing YouTube for about 8 years now, and I can safely say I'm way different at 30 years old than I was at 22. Today, I'm here with my co-host Augie Johnston, creator of the YouTube channel Baller Bootcamp, to share my experience with changing my online presence alongside my personality changes. I know Augie has had some of his own changes of heart over the years that he'll be sharing as well, and there are many chapters to any career, and YouTube is no different. My hope is that sharing our personal experiences and how we've navigated each chapter will help those listening to navigate the tumultuous space of YouTube as the years roll on, and as you no longer are the person you once were. All right, welcome to the meat of this episode. Once again, I am here with Augie Johnston. My name is Grant Ball, and we are talking about how to evolve your YouTube channel with your ever-evolving self. Now, I've separated everything into 4 chapters. This has been my trajectory. I think it'll line up pretty well with Augie's trajectory as well. And so I figure we'll just jump into it. Chapter 1. What is Chapter 1? Well, it's the beginning. To use a musician metaphor, this is your first album. You probably have a lot of initial motivation, or at the very least, there is no pressure. Either nobody is watching, or you've had some early success. You've had your entire life to build up ideas for videos, and you're simply in the throes of making that massive backlog of ideas a reality. So there can be a kind of comfort in this phase. You may still be romanticizing YouTube or just being creative and having any kind of audience at all. There's a lot of excitement here. Your videos aren't mechanized yet, meaning you don't necessarily have a workflow or even an established style. You're probably in the middle of developing these things, but the point is you're still a little raw. You have some initial excitement, and there isn't a whole lot of pressure. My experience with this chapter is I did have a lot of initial success, sort of. So the first 3 months of Treesicle, for those who don't know, Treesicle is a video game channel. And the first 3 months, me and the friends that I started it with, we were just playing games and recording them and commentating over them. And the genre is called Let's Plays, and nobody cared. For 3 months, we had 37 subscribers after 3 months, and most of those accounts were probably either our own accounts or our friends, and they weren't really even watching our stuff anyway. So during this chapter, there was not a whole lot of success going on until we created the first show, The Story You Never Knew. That was the show that took us off the ground into the stratosphere, so to speak. And I wrote the script for that, and my buds helped me edit it. I did the voiceover. I did most of the editing, and then they helped me with some of that. And then that first video, I think currently is sitting at over 2 million views now. So that is kind of the beginning of chapter 1. You know, there was even some phases of that chapter. And it can be frustrating when you aren't getting these views, but also there was no pressure. We kind of just would sit down as friends, play these games, and when we noticed that it wasn't working, that's when we decided to pivot, and I wrote this initial script for The Story You Never Knew on Samus from Metroid, and it did very well. And that kind of launched us into part B of chapter 1. Part A being when nobody was watching, part B being when, oh, there's actually an audience here and we have something to do. So that's my experience with chapter 1. And it was, I don't know, there wasn't much thinking involved. It was kind of, we were sitting down playing games, having fun, then it wasn't working, so we tried something else and it worked. So that's my experience. What about you, Augie? I'd like to hear the very beginnings of Baller Bootcamp.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and dive into that here, but I got one follow-up question. And the
Sure,
follow-up
sure.
question, yeah, is you said the story that was never told kind of took off. What do you mean by took off? So what were your videos doing before that, and then what happened? Like how many views did you get on that one, and what did that do?
Sure. So the story you never knew. That being our initial successful show. I believe so. The way we had it work was we initially posted to Reddit and like any forums we could find. Again, the video was on Samus from Metroid, which again is just a video game character. So I essentially found any forum anywhere where anybody was talking about Samus or Metroid at all.
Mm,
I just posted the video and was like, hey, Samus from Metroid is pretty cool. And I made a video about it. Check it out, guys. And it got all of this, like whether it was subreddits or random forums, it initially got the video maybe like 100 views or something, if even.
oh wow, not even a
Maybe
lot.
like yeah, like somewhere between 50 and 100, I would say. It was like a seed. You can think of it as a little seed. And the video was good enough to where people were actually watching it and commenting on it. Even people who didn't like the video, they were like leaving relatively long comments. Like I think if your video is so bad that people are indifferent to it, that's almost worse. So we were getting people who loved it, people who didn't like it, and basically that launched the initial success of it was this kind of advertising on
Gotcha.
forums. And as far as what we were doing before, so again we were doing let's plays, and that as far as what it looked like, I think again we had 37 subscribers, but the views were like maybe a video would get 100 views max, and I think we had posted. God, we must have posted like 30 videos in that 3 month period. And it just, we just weren't getting anywhere. Nothing was happening. It was kind of frustrating, but ultimately, there was just this weird kind of excitement with everything, even though nothing was working. That, again, this is chapter 1. And yeah, it was just, that was the transition, the beginning. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. And my kind of chapter one started on a Google search of how to make money online. And I've talked about this before, but I was in Europe living, and I wanted to make some extra money, and I couldn't get a job there because I only had a limited visa just for playing basketball, basically. So that led me eventually down the path to where you could, create a YouTube channel and sell products to your audience. Basically, I found that out that was actually a possibility. This is back in 2009. And I started creating a whole bunch of videos on there. And I created probably about 50 videos of me just working out in the game of basketball. And there was no talking, there's background music. I had a quick edit on them with a couple titles, but I uploaded about 50 of them and got to 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I also did a few other little videos too. I did so there was a dunk contest one year where Blake Griffin was in the dunk contest. It was also during the same time that a guy kind of blew up on social media. He was this short 5'10" white dude who played at a small Division III school, and he was really athletic, and he would jump up and was doing all these crazy dunks. And I don't think he actually got in. He did do the college slam dunk contest. And so what I did is I just took his college slam dunk contest clips and Blake Griffin from the NBA dunk contest, and I made like a video that kind of said like him versus Blake Griffin in a dunk contest. And that video did very well. And that was the one that I don't remember exactly how many views, but it was like probably like 10,000, 20,000, and it grew pretty quick. It went pretty viral.
Wow.
And yeah, that was on the same channel that I had all these workout videos. And so those videos just sat. I uploaded them over the course of probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months or even less, maybe like 3 months, because I just shot them, uploaded them. And then the channel grew, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't trying to monetize or anything. I wanted to, because I was more in that content phase where I was just consuming more content than creating it. I wasn't really driven to be a YouTuber at that point. But then as I continued to learn more and more about how to start an online business, eventually I knew that I wanted to become a trainer when I was coming home in the summers from playing in Europe, or when I was just done playing in Europe. I was like, I'm going to be a trainer, move up the ranks, become an NBA trainer someday. And so a year or two passed where I didn't upload on that channel anymore. And I still had these 1,000 subscribers. And so I took down all those videos because I was like, this is not how you grow a YouTube channel. You have to talk on camera. You have to give better value, more content. I need to do some coaching on camera. And so that's what I did. I eventually said, okay, we're going to do this like a business. I'm going to create products. I'm going to build an email list. I'm going to, pitch the email list, sign up in every video. And I was super motivated, right? Chapter 1, you talked about being at this time you are super motivated. And I was, like I've mentioned a million times, a little humble brag, but I was waking up early, right? Like nowadays, it'd be hard for me to wake up at 5:30 or 5 to get up and go to the gym to shoot videos because I was shooting them at a normal gym here in town. So, that's basically where my chapter 1 ends. And when I did re-release these videos and start pumping them out with talking, they were doing great. I was doing the same thing as you. I was sharing them in some Reddit forums and stuff like that. They were getting views and a lot of them are ranking for search terms right off the bat. So I did come with an SEO strategy and these things were all pretty much ranking. And back then it was all about view velocity was one even more important, maybe not more important than watch time and view duration, but from you sharing them in those Reddit groups, getting an initial traction on them, they would rank. And then if they were quality videos, they would stay ranked. So that's what was working for me back then. It's a little bit different now.
Hey there. You probably know the Video Creator Show is brought to you by VidChops.com. What is VidChops.com? Well, it is an editing service that will take the horrible burden of editing off your back. We all know video editing. It's tedious. It takes forever. But what if you had a professional who did it for you? You go to sleep, you wake up, it's done. Wouldn't that be magical? VidChops.com. Hire a professional, save yourself time and energy, and take your YouTube channel to the next level. Totally, yeah. And that's kind of the weird thing too, which we'll get into, is what works back then doesn't necessarily work anymore. That could be because of personality changes within yourself, or even just changes within the landscape of YouTube. So yeah, this has kind of been our experience with chapter 1. There's a lot of motivation, a lot of raw energy, or the pressure of nobody's watching, man. Who cares? Just have fun. And all of this is a little romantic. It's kind of fun. It's the part of YouTube that I think people often imagine, at least the mindset of it. So let's move into chapter 2. So chapter 2, a little different, of course. So you have some experience now. You have an established workflow. And this is where, to use the musician metaphor again, you're essentially writing your second album now. And perhaps you've heard the term second album syndrome. So remember, you had your entire life to write your first album. All the ideas over the years you've kind of accumulated in your head, you have turned them into reality. Chapter 2, now that you have a workflow, you have some experience, you maybe have some success, whether that's 100 subscribers or maybe 10,000, somewhere in between. Point is, you kind of know what you're doing at this point. And this is where you might start worrying that you might run out of ideas. I know. So with The Story You Never Knew, the idea was each video was about a different character. So the first one was on Samus from Metroid. The second one was about Master Chief from Halo. And it was like telling people the life story of this character, getting philosophical about it. Samus was, the bridge between all forms of consciousness in the universe. She could interact with an ancient Chozo being or a weird jellyfish Metroid thing, and she kind of had a bond with everything. So we would get kind of philosophical about it and get really in depth with specific characters. And we started kind of worrying, well, are we going to run out of video game characters? In the beginning, we didn't even think about this. We were just like, this character, that character, this character. And it became clear that some characters were easy to make a video about. Others were more difficult. Some franchises were just ridiculously complicated, like Metal Gear Solid. Other ones were easier, like Mario. You know, he's kind of a simple guy. It was pretty easy to write that script, but dear God, Big Boss from Metal Gear Solid was like, I almost had a mental breakdown making that video because, oh my God. But the point is, you kind of at chapter 2 start to run into more practical problems where it's no longer just like, I'm making videos. It's you start making choices based on, well, what's practical to make. Like this was a point where we started shifting into covering like the same franchise over and over again. So like Five Nights at Freddy's, you know, it was easier to make a billion videos on that game or games like it instead of covering a different character every time, because then you have to like research a new game every time or play a new game every time, and it just kind of it adds a level of complexity to shift into a whole nother universe each video, right? So again, chapter 2 is you may run out of ideas. There's all these practical problems that may start popping up, but you're also seeing some success, and that's really exciting. You know, this is tangible success. The romanticism is starting to kind of fade into like actual numbers, and that can be exciting in a different way. You might start making some actual money at this point, and the pitfall here is you might start making decisions based on money. I know we did. So again, with it being easier to make Five Nights at Freddy's videos, which for those that don't know, Five Nights at Freddy's was just an extremely popular game, still is. And, you know, we knew we could pay the bills by doing that. It was easy to take the channel to a place where we could all, as 4 people, pay rent if we covered this game a lot. And we covered the same games. So we covered a lot of Pokemon, and this thing started to get more practical. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And the advantage here is you probably have a workflow down at this point. You know how to make your videos, and there is a kind of comfort in that. You're no longer just sort of throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. You know what you're doing. You know how to kind of segment your time. And this is exciting. But again, the ideas, you're worried about that. There's practical decisions, a little more boring. Chapter 2 was interesting. And I think chapter 3 is where things get really weird. But before we talk about that, let's hear about your chapter 2, Augie. So, you know, you have a workflow now. You know how to make your videos. What was that like for you?
Yeah, chapter 2 is where I kind of like feel like I caught my rhythm and was able to bulk record. I feel like I was finally good on camera to where I could actually, you know, not have to do 100 takes. We kind of had the cameras figured out at that point. And, you know, we upgraded our cameras, right, during our chapter 2. We went from a camcorder, like a Sony handheld camcorder that you see moms recording at the soccer games using those things. And we upgraded to a DSLR. That came with its own challenges, but nothing that we couldn't overcome. And the business that I had built on the back end was working well. And in my chapter 2, I felt like, hey, look, this is like, I felt very hopeful because I was like, this is working. Like if I can just scale this up, you know, in my chapter 2, I say I was getting anywhere from like 300 to 500,000 views a month. It was kind of like the prime of my channel. You know, we were getting emails coming in over 100 a day to our email newsletter, all from that free organic traffic. People were buying our products off of our email list in chapter 2. So that's basically where I was at. And yeah, everything was good. I think my wife even launched a channel around that time doing beauty tutorials. And yeah, that was good. We were just kind of hitting our rhythm and sticking with it and not missing uploads and not really at that point being too strategic though, as far as pleasing the algorithm, learning more about the algorithm. I kind of did all my learning at that point front loaded, and I was just kind of executing at that point. I'd finally kind of got off that only consuming hamster wheel where you're just consuming all the content. And yeah, that was it for me. That was chapter 2.
And so, as far as your mindset during chapter 2, did you feel like it was more positive than chapter 1? Was it a little more mundane? What did that feel like on a personal level?
Yeah, it felt good. It felt good because, like I said, everything was just hitting our rhythm with everything. There was still growth there. I think as long as you see growth on your channel, right?
Yes,
That's
yes.
where you're happy, you're content, and that's where I was at, and nothing was really challenging me. I think for me, it was always like I just wanted more.
Yeah.
Why doesn't this one blow up? Why doesn't this one blow up? Although the growth is still happening, any unhappiness was just me being not patient and wondering, oh, YouTube's doing great, I'm growing. Why aren't I blowing up on Instagram? I'm posting some videos on Instagram, or why is my and also a little bit of shiny object syndrome that you go through during
Yeah,
that
yeah.
point where you're like, whoa, this is easy. When you start to see the growth, I'm like, this is easy. Like I should like launch 20, what if I had 20 other channels, like,
Yeah.
oh, and I was like, oh, look, the sales process that we set up is working. I want to, partner. I should partner with other people and like get a soccer guy going and do all this. So yeah, it was good times.
Totally. Yeah, it's almost like you still have the enthusiasm of the very beginning, but now you have some experience and some actual success. And in some ways, this is the real honeymoon phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if nobody's watching, then there's no pressure, but it's always more fun when when people are watching. Let's be real. Let's be real. Like chapter 2 is kind of the best it gets, at least towards the beginning. It's you can kind of be idealistic. You haven't necessarily been tested yet, or rather you've passed the first test of getting an audience.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it's exciting, and you're a little high off of it. And I certainly loved it. Sounds like you did too. And this is, I think, it sounds like you started making some money-based decisions and they started going very well. I think you monetized your channel better than I did. So you were like selling products and you weren't just relying on ad revenue and sheer amount of views. So the way we were monetizing our channel at this time was just the more views we get, the more money we make because we are getting YouTube ads, and that's just how it worked. So it was kind of dumb on our part. You were much smarter about setting things up, and I commend you for that. So, yeah,
I will say, I will say that like, it's just like I was creating content because I wanted to be a trainer, right? You were creating content because you wanted to be a YouTuber. So it's kind of a little bit of a different setup and a little bit of a different opportunities when it comes to monetizing. So, I mean, it makes sense that you weren't all of a sudden coming out with a course or something when you're just trying to make great videos. So it's a little different.
Yeah, I think so. You wanted to be a trainer. In many ways, I wanted to be a philosopher. Looking back on it, I guess to get personal for a second, I spend a lot of time in my own head, especially when I was younger. I would just kind of think deeply about things, but it wasn't very obvious how this was useful at all. It was like, okay, well, this makes it harder to work a normal job because I'm kind of a space cadet. A lot of my friends who have maybe a more normal disposition, they're not just staring at a wall for 30 minutes and thinking about the universe or whatever. I, in many ways, I think wanted validation for that. Like, why am I like this? What is the use of this? And yes, I needed more views to get more money, but I think in a way, I wanted more views for validation. If I could get famous for my philosophical ideas about video game characters, then I could be. The universe had given me a stamp of approval. I was getting that stamp of approval for my kind of annoying disposition. And I liked that. It felt like my uniqueness was being celebrated by people. And man, that felt good. And I think this chapter is really about that. You wanted to be a trainer, I wanted to be a philosopher, and I think this is sort of, you've gotten the validation that, oh, I am a really good trainer, oh, I am a really good philosopher, look at these ideas, look at this money, look at this success, and it feels great. It feels really good. And so do you have anything else to add about this chapter, or shall we move into the intrepid chapter 3?
Let's go ahead and move on.
All right. Chapter 3, I have named The Gauntlet. Now, this is, in my opinion, the most difficult part, at least mentally. I think chapter 4 is difficult in a different way, but chapter 3, I found there was the most depression, the most angst, the most confusion, and it sucked. It really sucked. So, the Gauntlet, also known as the Peak. So, with Treacicle, our peak, we were getting between 3 to 4 million views a month on average. Sometimes it would spike up to like 5 or 6, but for the most part, we were getting 3 to 4 million views per month. And I think we were making about 9 to 12,000 per month off ad revenue plus sponsorships. And, we were making a decent living. However, this is when, again, we were kind of covering the same topics a lot. So Five Nights at Freddy's, Pokemon, we were kind of getting funneled into this category. And we also started running into problems with the YouTube ecosystem. So this was around 2017, where the adpocalypse happened. Advertisers pulled out of YouTube, and YouTube panicked, and they released an AI onto their platform to demonetize as many videos as possible so that they could appease advertisers and say, hey, Coca-Cola, don't worry. We're not going to put your ads on any videos that could possibly be offensive at all. And turns out Treacicle was kind of an edgy channel at the time. We're still a little edgy, but we were just swearing a lot and, I don't know, making sex jokes, and we didn't care. Who cares? It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And no, it didn't matter. Like, you could get monetized no matter how many F-bombs you were dropping. You made less money, but you could still make good money. Again, for 3 to 4 million views a month, we were making between like $9,000 and $12,000. And that's pretty dang good. Now, we probably make, I want to say, half that for the same amount of views. Though it kind of depends. Like, with the amount of swearing we were doing at the time, we would be making half that. We've decided to kind of tone it down a bit. And now, if we were getting that same amount of views, we would be I still making not that much money, but more than half. So the point is, the Gauntlet is, you could think of it as the peak of your channel. Chapter 2 has kind of come to its end. You are still in your prime, so to speak, your initial prime. And there's challenges that start popping up. So for me, one was getting burnt out. So I had kind of found this niche of these games, but I was kind of getting tired of these games. I initially got into this because I wanted to talk about philosophical ideas, but in covering the same games over and over and over again, you kind of run out of different ideas to talk about, and you end up having to follow the trends, So, there's an update to the game. Well, let's talk about the update to the game instead of philosophizing about a character. This was the easiest way to get views. This also, chapter 3, the Gauntlet, you might be full-time if you are successful enough. And there's a lot of pressure. So we were making, again, more decisions based off money. And this was part of the initial downfall, you could say. We were trying to pay the rent, so we were making decisions to satisfy the short term, but not so much decisions to satisfy the long term. In many ways, I think, alienated our more tried and true audience that we grew with, where we were covering any character we wanted, and these people would show up to any video, really. And sure, the views weren't as reliable, but looking back, even videos on obscure characters in the long run would end up getting hundreds of thousands of views still. They were kind of slow burns. But there was a lot of internal debate and arguments about this. I was more on the side of wanting to cover the obscure characters. But anyway, if you're working with a team, chapter 3, I think, is when tensions will really start to arise. How are we going to run this channel? We've been doing this for a while. We're running out of ideas, blah, blah, blah. People kind of get solidified in their roles. They get defensive of their roles. This is kind of, I found this to be a really difficult time, especially with the adpocalypse. Just everything felt very threatening. And it was difficult. So I'm curious, Augie, how was your chapter 3? What does that look like? You clearly had set your channel up in a way that was more sustainable, probably was not hit as hard by the adpocalypse. So I'm curious about your experience.
Yeah, I was not hit by that because none of my content had any cussing or anything like that. But my chapter 3 definitely was all full of a lot of challenges because, like I said, the channel got up to 400, 500,000 views a month, was doing great. At that point, it was full time with the back end business that I had set up, although I was not making a ton of money through AdSense, although it was some, but it was more, through the business side that I was making most of my money. And the problem was that it just kind of plateaued. And so throughout all of chapter 3, there was no growth, right? Zero growth. Mm-hmm. And at that point too, was right around the time too, where there was an algorithm change on YouTube that really just switched everything to watch time, right? So all of a sudden, short videos were no longer acceptable. There is a way to do it, right? If you create some binge-worthy content, David Dobrik's videos are 4 minutes and 20 seconds, but that kind of content, like with David Dobrik, like people will go and watch 20 videos. They'll watch a lot because it's just so entertaining and bingeable. With the basketball training tutorials, it's a little stale. After a while, you're not going to want to stick around for 20 4-minute videos. But so anyways, with that being said, I was pre-recording. I was batching all my videos and doing them all in the summer and then releasing them once a week throughout the year when I lived in Europe. And so that change had happened. I had already had all my videos. I was a little bit aware of it. I started to see other people in my space starting to create the longer videos for the first time. My videos were all around, 2-3 minutes, sometimes up to 6, 7 sometimes. So I just kept up with all the videos I recorded, I just kept going. 2-minute video, next one's a 3-minute video, all these short ones, no growth, plateau, average view duration on my channel, very low, right? Because of this. And the algorithm's looking at that, and I remember seeing other channels, basketball training channels, just pop up out of nowhere and start off with some 10-minute videos and always have 10 to 15-minute videos. And their channels just totally surpassed mine. And I had to sit there and just watch that while I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and create some long videos. I'm not just going to roll over. Right. And I did, and it became way more challenging. Right. So the next summer when I go home to shoot videos, I'm shooting longer form videos because I understand this is what I need to do. And it's a lot more challenging to shoot a 10-minute video, that's for sure, than a quick, especially when basketball drills, when a quick short one gets the job done. It really does. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I was dragging them on. I felt like, oh, and then do this. Or instead it was back in the day, it was how to dribble through the legs. And now it was 19 ways to dribble through your legs. And it was just exhausting coming up with this content. So I fly back to Europe 3 months later after summer had ended, ready to play my next season. And here I am, not even enough content to last the year, right? So I'm over there in Europe, in between practices, getting in the gym with my wife, recording more videos, long form. And that's where my burnout started to kick in. I was like, man, this is just not as sustainable as it was. And it was so much easier before. I could literally one take a video, and a lot of my early ones are one takes, 3 minutes, one take. And so I'm putting in all this extra effort in phase 3 here. I'm starting to do vlogs. I'm willing to do what it takes. But because my library was already so big at that point with so many short videos, like I said, average view duration was not growing. And I was just at a plateau. So the good news is that I was still working really hard. I was working harder than before, and I was plateauing. So I was still able to make a full-time income off it. Everything was fine. But if you would have asked me, in chapter 2, where you're going to be in 2 years or, a year and a half from now, I would say, okay, I'm at 500,000. I'll probably be around $1 million a month. And then, a couple more years after that, I'll be at 2 million. But I think, and I've seen this with other people too, if your channel is based on short videos because maybe it's really old and all your videos are short, like even if now you start releasing long videos that are getting good average view duration and stuff, it's still pretty hard to grow. There's almost a little bit of an algorithmic limit on your channel. And so that's basically where I was at. Just still sticking with it, but not seeing the growth and not really having that satisfaction that I had before.
Totally. Yeah. So the peak stagnant growth, these things are the cornerstone of this period. And it sucks. It really sucks. Part of this, like, yes, algorithm changes. We dealt with a similar algorithm change where, though it was funny. Our reaction was we wanted to make more videos. You wanted to make longer videos, though ironically, we kind of stopped making longer videos so that we could make more videos, which I didn't really support at the time, but it was hard to know what to do exactly, and we were all kind of making the best decisions we could. Not trying to play the blame game. It just I don't know. It was hard. It's hard to navigate this landscape and to know what the right move is, and especially when you're hitting this kind of peak. I think it's normal to hit that peak. You've entered this space, you have a niche, and you have a style, and there's a certain amount of people who are interested in it. And obviously there's algorithmic limitations here, but there's also, I think, just how many people are actually interested in your particular style. Maybe for us, it was actually, with the videos we were making, around 4 million people a month are willing to watch it. With exactly how we were doing things. So when you hit this stagnant point, the key here is there's a desire to change something. You're like, okay, well, I've hit this wall.
Yeah.
What do I do? How do I navigate this? And this is where, for us, we kind of doubled down on making more videos and just kind of hitting what we knew worked. And it kind of artificially boosted things temporarily. We switched to more face cam. We stopped doing the story you never knew as much. It was kind of more shorter, sillier videos, like how tall is Mario? Kind of like dumb videos that were like pretty easy to write and make. But I think it kind of watered down the content. You talked about like trying to make these longer videos, and you felt like you were trying too hard and kind of adding fluff. I think that is a common pitfall that both of us hit during this period where you're trying to get over that hump. You've hit this ceiling. How do you get over the ceiling? How do you do it? How do you do it? There's no rule book here. So you got to change something. And oftentimes, I think what trips people up. So for anybody who may be going through this now, or maybe you're still in chapter 2 and you're kind of looking at chapter 3 right now, you're not quite there yet. Burnout, I think, starts making you make bad decisions. For us, we were stressed about money. We were starting to get stressed and a little bored with the process. And I think you start to, at least for us, there was a bit of panic involved. And you never want to make decisions when you're panicked. You always want to make long-term choices. So looking back, the advice I would have given myself is, hey man, maybe get a part-time job so that you don't have to worry about living, month to month with this income. And then you can kind of start looking at things in the long term. So I think with this period, when you hit your peak, it might be smart. It depends how much money you're making, obviously, and how easy it comes to you. But for us, it was a lot of work to make one video, even a simple video. And so you wanted it to perform well. So if it doesn't perform well, you panic. If we could have just kind of stepped back and all got part-time jobs, like, I don't know, working at a coffee shop, who cares? It doesn't even matter. Just take the pressure off and start looking at the long run and stop trying to just like burst forward and force it to work. Don't force anything, try to remember that initial enthusiasm you had and try to cultivate that again, but in a different form, because, this is about shifting with your changing personality. Your personality is going to be different at this point than it was during chapter 1. Do you have any advice, Augie, for like maybe what you could have done differently during that period?
Yeah, I think like what you just said kind of resonated with me. Like you're looking for new ways, new this, new that, like shiny object syndrome in a way. And I would create a 10-minute video, and then I would be like, okay, well, there it is. It's 10 minutes. Like it's gonna go viral, or it's gonna at least get pushed out. And it wouldn't, and so that was kind of setting myself up. I think it's the mindset that you need to have is the same mindset that we always talk about. Just continue to get better at making videos, right? Just continue to make small changes, better lighting, better whatever script, better this, better that. And then just look at your analytics. And when you look at your analytics, don't look at the views, just look at the metrics that actually matter, like the click-through rate, the view duration, and that'll tell you if you're making good videos or not. So if your view duration, if I'd have looked at my view duration and just been like, is it getting better? Well, it is getting better. And that's the only thing that would have mattered to me is, what actually mattered, the view duration, then I would have been happy. I would have been like, okay, well, I just got to stick with it. If I just stick with it, I know that it's going to pay off. But instead I was like, 10-minute video. Where's the views? Where's the views? Instead of just looking like, oh, look, it actually did its job. It's getting, a lot better view duration than these 2-minute videos that I used to have. So I must be doing the right thing. Let me just stick with it, because those videos are now doing very well. Like those long ones that I have at this point, like are some of my top performers, at least for like my recent videos, right? I'm like, look back at my most popular videos. Oh, those are like 7 years ago, like the release dates are super old. You're like, oh, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. Oh, look, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. And it's these 10-minute videos that eventually did their job.
So it sounds like you actually made the right call in a way. It sounds like it took a personal toll on you, but as far as the channel itself, it seems like they did actually work out for you, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think if I would have stuck with that, and for me, it was like it was more of like comparing myself to as part of the problem. I'm like, oh, well, these other channels are releasing 2 10-minute videos a week. I'm struggling to get one out. Like, I don't know if this is sustainable for the long term. They have videographers. They must have this. They have more gym access, And so that was another reason that was just kind of like led to burnout and just, a tough time in life compared to chapter 2, and everything was just great when I wasn't comparing myself to anybody but myself, really. So, yeah, if I would give myself advice, I would say just stick with it. Focus on what actually matters, making good videos and better videos, and that's it.
Yeah, totally agree. Like making better videos, really good videos it can seem almost corny, I think, when you're in the throes of it, and especially if you're worried about money. It can feel like, oh my God, like, yeah, just make better videos, of course. But actually, like, that's how you keep your audience that you have. Like, they showed up for your good videos. Keep making good videos. It's very simple, but I think it is good advice. Obviously, if you're spending way too much time on each of these videos, maybe your workflow is not practical. There could be some technical details that you need to tweak. Maybe you need to actually hire some people to help you to scale up. That could be how you take things to the next level, which of course is a bit of a risk. But again, maybe taking a part-time job wouldn't be such a bad thing, so you could afford to do that. And to more importantly, especially during this phase where you're starting to get burned out, some advice I would give my older self is, if you can, like, hire editors. Like, it didn't really work with us because we had 4 people and everybody was kind of involved. It was just, it was a little more complicated, I think, for us. But hiring people to do grunt work that you are sick of doing is huge when you're starting to get burned out. Totally key. Would recommend 1,000%. It can really take you to the next level here. So with that, it's time to move on to chapter 4. This is a tumultuous chapter in a way, and you're probably familiar with it. The first 3 are the very internal, but the 4th one you've probably seen yourself with some YouTubers you like. Chapter 4 is either the revival or the end. Oh, yes, very, very dramatic here. So what do I mean by that? Well, if it's the end, then you have probably seen your favorite YouTubers just kind of disappear. You know, maybe it's Filthy Frank. There's plenty of YouTubers that they just kind of stopped making videos. Maybe they made a couple occasionally and just kind of, then they just dropped off. It's a sort of an abrupt end or a slow death. And that's what the end looks like. Sometimes they don't come back, but sometimes they do. And the key thing with this chapter is you got to go internally. You have to figure out your own issues and sort of what led to you getting burned out, to you not wanting to make videos, to your channel not doing as well as it once did. This is kind of I'm not particularly religious, but it's a come to Jesus moment, essentially. It's you have to be honest with yourself about why things failed. Maybe certain things were your fault. Maybe certain things were other people's fault. This is, I would say, like the most trying time, it's maybe not the most trying, but it's the make or break. Like, are you going to come back or not? Like, this is that time. And for us, this really looked like, so besides Treesicle, we had a second channel, Bonsai Pop. Bonsai Pop is an anime channel that is actually still going strong to this day. Treesicle has still been on a bit of a break. But Bonsai Pop, we decided 2 guys on our team will get Bonsai Pop, the other 2 will get Treesicle. Obviously, I was one of the guys who got Treesicle, and that we called it the divorce. So we had 4 guys running 2 channels, and we split it into 2 guys each running their own channels. So there was kind of some legal stuff here. There was a lot of conversations about, well, how do we split it up? Like, is this channel worth more than the other channel? Like, do we deserve money? Do you deserve money? This is kind of like if you're working on a team and things haven't gone as well as you wanted, there can be a lot of conversations to have about how things got to where they are. And I think this is kind of where I think you and your team will reveal who they really are. And fortunately, we are all still very good friends. And ultimately, I guess we're a bunch of good dudes, is what I came to figure out. We all made mistakes, but we kind of talked it through, worked it out, made a split that made sense. And that was great. And so that was the beginning of chapter 4 for us. And for me, after that split, my last day with Treesicle, my last day with Bonsai Pop, and my last day posting regularly to Treesicle was March 31st of 2020. So it coincided with all the COVID, all the society falling apart or feeling like it was. There's a lot going on. So this was a time I decided to start freelancing and kind of retreat inwards, kind of work on my own mental health, not worry about YouTube. This was a big thing too. I felt like my identity had become intertwined with YouTube. Like, I didn't know who I was without this YouTube channel. It was so important to who I was that I had to explore who I was without it. And during this time, I was making money in other ways. Like I said, I was kind of freelancing. I was editing videos for other people. I was helping other people build their YouTube channels. I moved to a totally different city and to a place with lower rent. And it just all these kind of personal shifts were happening. So for me, this was basically between the ages of 28 and 30. I'm 30 now. So it's kind of the end or the revival. It's very personal. You are probably not posting videos, or if you are, it's very rare. I think I posted 2 videos to Treeskull during this period of about 2 years, which, remember, we were posting like 1 to 2 videos a week at our max. So again, very personal, working through what went wrong, being honest about it, and also working on your mental health. Like I felt like I'd kind of gotten chewed up and spat out by this process of YouTube, and it was very confusing. I didn't quite know what to do. For me, I also had a personal channel where I covered. During this period, I made a lot of like. Just videos that were close to my heart on, things like ghosts or, fairies, the old gods, getting like very philosophical. The combination of humans and machines, cyborgs, magic. I had a mushroom trip that I turned into a video. Called it I Went to the Fairy Realm, and I was really like exploring myself. So I remember one thing I said to my team during the divorce, quote unquote, was I just want to make videos. I just want to make videos. And all of the crap we talked about earlier about like, having to cover certain topics and pay the rent, like it got so complicated. Like I started this just to make videos, and we were sort of faced with the reality of this business, and it wasn't necessarily anybody's fault, but it got really complicated. And so for me, it was cathartic to make these weird ass videos and I advertised them on Treesicle, and they got a decent amount of views. I think the top one got like 20 something thousand views. And I got a lot of comments and feedback, and I felt like I was able to kind of share a piece of my soul for the first time in a long time. So that was sort of part of my personal catharsis. So anyway, very personal, and that's just how Chapter 4 is. So Augie, you have taken a long break from Baller Bootcamp. I believe you are coming back with a VidChops channel. So let's hear about your revival.
Yeah, sure. So, we talked about my Chapter 3, the plateau and just feeling discouraged, and then right after that time, it was basically had been home from playing in Europe for a few years now, maybe 1 to 2 years. And my wife had gotten a job. She became a teacher. There goes my cameraman, already feeling kind of burnt out. I just was already running this VidChops business, editing my videos. I definitely had that set up by that point. And I just saw kind of the writing on the wall. I saw the next step. And for me, it wasn't so emotional or sad. I knew I was kind of sick of Baller Bootcamp, and I just didn't see a bright future for it, which with VidChops, I did see a bright future. So I was able to kind of parlay what I had done with Baller Bootcamp into the next thing. And I think that's how it works in life. From what I've seen is, in high school, I used to like get together with my buddies and make rap beats, and we would record, and I got pretty good on a computer doing that, and I could edit audio, and, I knew the user interface. So when it came time to make YouTube videos, I knew how to make videos. I knew how to use a computer. So I did that when, I learned all those steps. I learned how to make a website. So when it came time to launch VidChops, I knew how to make a website. I knew how to do some marketing. And so it's kind of like a stepping stone. I felt like I was stepping onto the next stone, which felt good. I was once again motivated. And then, as VidChops was growing, I decided I'm going to start creating content again. And I did. I think I created, maybe 10 to 15, maybe 20 videos. Then life, I was super busy at that time. This is for a VidChops YouTube channel, and just for whatever reason, stopped making them with a plan to come back. And it's been a few years since then. And I'm happy to say that I just did record 2 videos last week.
Yeah.
Which we've been talking about on this podcast for a few months now, but I did actually do that last week, create some shorts, some videos, and it's going to be good. I'm excited to kind of get back into it, although it is still challenging. And we've talked about it on this, I'm an overthinker now when it comes to creating content, when before it was just grab the camcorder, hit record, and I'm going to one take this thing with no notes even, now it's like I have a script, I'm really focused on the hook and all that kind of stuff. So it is challenging still. I'm not going to say it's easy, but I'm excited.
Right on. Yeah. And I think that's the end of Chapter 4, right? Is hopefully you're excited in some way. Even if you decided to leave YouTube altogether, I think the point is you've figured out your identity and your path enough to be excited about Chapter 5, which I haven't really given a name to or even written down, but it's kind of a new beginning. You've kind of had this journey and you have either decided to come back to YouTube or you've decided to do something else. And that can be a beautiful thing. So yeah, we actually had an episode we recorded a couple weeks ago. It was how to come back after a long break, and definitely listen to that for anybody who wants some very specific advice about that. But this is the essence of Chapter 4. You take a break, make a recovery, and come back or don't. And that's the simplicity of it. For me, it was very emotional. Sounds like for you, it was still like kind of annoying, but and maybe confusing. But ultimately, you were not making crazy videos about fairies or something. Still proud of those videos, by the way. But
That's cool.
An interesting time of life, that's for sure, and
Definitely.
might make more.
Nice.
So yeah, that's Chapter 4, and Chapter 5, which I won't really stick to. It's coming back. It's the comeback, you are going to come back, hopefully having maybe with a totally different style or like a renewed style. Perhaps you are, I know I am, hiring people to do the work I no longer want to do because I've done it so much now. It's a revival, a chance for a new beginning. And that's the beautiful trajectory. And just making videos how you want to make them again. You've kind of shed the jadedness of Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. You're coming back with a fresh perspective. And that's it. That's the process, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a good one, and it's kind of to be continued, and that's how it should be for all video creators, right? Who knows? We might be still dropping videos when we're 50 years old. It's going to be on a totally different topic, but it is enjoyable to release a video, and it's exciting to check your views and see what people are commenting, and yeah, it's a fun process, and that's why you're listening to this podcast, because you enjoy it too.
Totally. And with that, I think we could summarize a little bit, but I feel like it was pretty straightforward. So Chapter 1, the beginning, you got your first album, pretty romantic. Chapter 2, you got your workflow down. You maybe are experiencing second album syndrome. Will I run out of ideas? But ultimately, you probably are feeling pretty good in Chapter 2. You've hit your stride. You've had some success. You're seeing the numbers just go up and up and up. The sky's the limit. Chapter 3 is the gauntlet. You've hit your peak. You've hit a ceiling. You feel like you need to change. And perhaps you make the wrong change, or you're just burnt out. You're tired. Even if it works, you have, quote unquote, sold out to a certain extent. And it's a rough chapter, the gauntlet. Chapter 4, the revival, your come to Jesus moment, so to speak. And Chapter 5 is your comeback. And, whether that comeback is on YouTube or elsewhere, that is the process. That is how you evolve with your ever-changing self, and be realistic about the fact that you are not the same person you were when you first started your YouTube journey.